Now the next thing that we would like to do over here is to run a migration to create our database tables. And previously we have created the models already, but we haven't actually migrated that to our actual DB itself. So we will be using Alembic over here. Alembic is a lightweight database migration tool for the SQLAlchemy, and it's also maintained by the same author, right, the contributor of the SQLAlchemy, and it's a database toolkit for the Python over here. And we'll be using this to do all of the migration, creating our database tables and all of the stuff over here. The first thing that we need to do is let's go to the installation over here. And the thing that we need to do over here is we need to activate our Python virtual environment over here, and then we need to install the Alembic over here. And make sure that you have activated your environment, and after that we need to go to the requirement.txt file and just add the dependency over here. And now we can run the installation. So pip, right, so pip pip, and install the -r requirement requirements.txt file over here, and that's going to install the dependency over here. And once the dependency installed, we are good to go. The next thing is that we need to go and set up our Alembic. So let's go to the documentation. Once we have run the installation, we need to go and run this particular command, the install, and then we need to run the init, right? So this init is going to initialize the Alembic for us. So let's just go and copy this particular command, and let's just go back to our terminal over here, and let's just go and run the Alembic init Alembic itself. That's going to initialize the Alembic for us, and it's going to create the two files for us. One is the alembic.ini file, the configuration file, and then the folder, that's the it contains the other like the version information migration file, the env configuration, the Python file, and those stuff. So these two files should be generated once you run this particular command over here. And if you don't see that particular file, you are missing something. So make sure that you check out that you have this particular one is the Alembic folder, and one is the alembic.ini file over here. Once we have done this particular setup, we are good to go. So let's go to our this particular the Alembic folder over here, and I will just drag this to my code. So let's just go to the core data, and in the local, inside this local, I will add that over here. Let's move this particular folder over here, right? And that's now inside the app, core, data, and then local, and then the Alembic. And that's because I need to import some of the files later on, the model files from our core, and it will be better to move that to inside our local over here, which is to the core, data, local, and then the Alembic over here. Now that will be much more easier once we want to import our features, all right, because the features is inside the app over here. From the features, we need to later import each of the model file that we have defined in our infrastructure. So later we need to import that particular file. That's why I have moved it inside the app, right? And the alembic.ini file should be in the root of your project. That should be good enough. And make sure to go back to the documentation over here and read all of the documentation, because that's going to help you in understanding much of this stuff, because I'm not going to explain each and every stuff over here. So creating a migration script, running your first migration, there are a lot of these particular the information over here, like editing the ini file, tutorial. So let's go to the tutorial and just go and read all of this. So Alembic, what does this particular alembic.ini file does? It's the Alembic main configuration file, which is generated by all template, right? And if you have the by project toml file, I currently don't have your main project Alembic, this directly lives within your application source tree and is the home of the migration environment. It can be named anything, and a project that use the multiple database may even have more than one, right? So env.py file, this is the Python script that is run whenever the Alembic migration tool is invoked. So all of those information you can, all of this file folders you can actually find in your project itself. So make sure to go and read this particular documentation and try to understand each of the concept over here, because I'm not going to explain each and everything over here. That's going to take a lot of the time over here. So I'll leave it to you. And once we have these two files generated, let's go back to our let's go to the app, and let's go to the core, and let's go to the data. And from here, you can rename this to anything, right? So you can rename it to the migration or the any other naming convention that you want to prefer, but let's give it to Alembic over here. Now let's open the env.py file over here, and here we need to actually go and run this particular configure the run migration offline and run migration online, and we need to import all of our metadata from our base that we have previously created. This is the base, and every base is imported in our, let's go to the feature and go to the admin in the country, go to infrastructure module, and in our module we are using that particular base from there. So using this base we can get the module and all of its the column and all of this information that it provides for us. So let's go back to the env.py file. We need to configure this particular file over here. Here we need to import the database. Okay, so here there is no database URL. Let's just go and create the database URL over here, and let's just go and add the database URL. So I guess we have the setup over here already. We need to do the same setup over here. PostgreSQL plus the PSYCOPG2, that's the adapter that we are using. So let's just go back over here and let's add it over here as well. And I guess let's just go and add it to the double quote over here. And then the Richard, that is the DB username. This is the password over here, and this is the server, and this is the port that should match with your actual port, and this is the database name that we want to connect over here. And since this is the @ sign over here, it may confuse the server itself, because we also have the @ at the localhost, which is the server. So for this one, I guess we can do the URL encode using the, I guess it's the asterisk and then the 40. That should give us the @ sign once we do the URL encoding. And I guess that should be fine. So we have the database URL over here, and let's go back to our env.py file over here. And now what I can do over here is I can just go and grab that. So let's just go, and I guess before this particular metadata we can actually go and after the config and before this metadata. So let's just go and say that let's add the get the database db URL, and for the db URL I'm not going to use the config file. I'm going to use from the .env file over here, not the configuration file itself. So that should be the database URL, and I need to import the OS. So let's just go and import the OS over here, import the OS, and get env the database URL that we have defined in our the env variable over here. Just make sure that it matches over here, and once we have that, we are going to grab that particular database URL. But the problem over here is the os.getEnv, it's not actually going to load our env file over here, right? So we need to manually load this particular file over here to grab this particular URL. So for that, we need to install the one more package over here. Let's open up our requirement.txt and let's add that particular python dash.env, and let's just go and run the installation script one more time. that's going to install that particular dependency. And once that's done, let's just go back over here and let's import our, let's go and import over here from the .env. I need to import the load underscore the .env. That's going to load our env over here, configuration over here. So let's just go, I guess, below this one, and here load the env file over here, and let's call the load env over here. And here we can actually pass in our env file. So currently we only have the one file, that is the I guess .env, right? So we only have .env file over here, but in case if you have the multiple env file like the env.prod, env.dev or something else, right? What you can do is, in that case, you can just go over here and add the one more configuration or the variable. Let's call this one as the app underscore the env over here, and you can just go and say this is for the dev, and you can have the env.dev or env.production, right? So now once we have that, let's go back to over here, and here what we can do is I can say env underscore the mood, which will be of equals to the get the os.get env and the env app.env. So I guess that's what we have, app.env. Make sure that it matches over here, and once we grab that, we get the mood, which may be dev or production, right? And then the file naming convention should follow that one. And once we have that, I can say the env underscore the file, which will be of equals to the, I can just format the .env dot and then the mode, right? So it may be of .env dot dev dot env dot prod, and I can replace that over here using that code. So if you want to load the multiple configuration based on that particular app environment. But for now we just have one file, so let's just go and load it directly over here. That will be of the .env, right? So .env over here, that is what we have over here. Let's just go and comment out this one over here. In case if you want to use that, you can just go and uncomment this one over here. And here what we'll do is we'll add a small exception handling over here, and let's just go and check if not the database URL over here. Let's try to raise the error. The database URL is not set in the .env file, so that should be good enough to know that we haven't set up the database URL in our environment variable file over here. That should raise an error. And the next thing now, once we have that, is we need to add all of our metadata over here. So the metadata will be coming from our base that we have defined over here. So let's just go and import that particular base over here. I guess let's import the below this one over here. So let's just go and say the import the base over here, and let's just go and import that. Make sure that you import the correct base over here. And once we import that particular base, now I can pass in the metadata over here from the base. That's going to grab all of the metadata that we have defined in our model, because we are using the same base over here in our model. So if you may have the country model, you have the company model, user model, and all of those models, that's using the same base. And once you import that particular base over here and make use of the metadata, that's going to grab all of our metadata from our models. And for this particular database URL, you can actually make use of the Alembic configuration file itself over here. If you go down somewhere here, that should be a path for the URL over here, right? This is the actual path, but we don't want to make use of this one. We want to actually get the URL from our database environment variable over here, not from the configuration file. But if you want to make use of that, that's also fine. You can use that one. But since I'm committing it to the repo, it may contain some of the sensitive information like the password username. So that's why I'm using the environment variable to load that particular configuration to our env.py file for the database URL over here. The second option would be to go and load our models over here. So how do I load? After I import the base over here, I can import the models over here. Right, so import the models. Currently we only have one model, so maybe I can make use of the try and then the catch over here, and instead of passing it over here, I will just go and maybe erase a validation value error model not found over here. And here I need to import. You may actually go and dynamically import all of the models from this particular specific all of your the models folder, but what I would like to do over here is I would like to manually import over here. The manual import is because I want to make sure that each of the model are created in a particular order, because you may have a relationship with the multiple models, and once you use a dynamic import over here, that may not work because the actual relationship may fail because the table or the model may not exist once this particular model you are creating, right? So if you create it manually, you can define which model should be created first, second, third, so it can actually go and create all of your relationship properly over here. So that's why I'm using the manual import over here. And here I'll just go and call, say, the import the country, it should be of the COUNT country model over here. Let's just go and import that one over here, and that should not from the app core, so let's just go and remove that. It should be from the app, and then it's from the features, and then I need to go to the admin. From admin I can import the country, and in the country I can go to the infrastructure, and in the infrastructure I have the models, and from here I can import the country models over here. And this is not accessed over here. Make sure you import the correct one over here. So if you go to the country model, I can import the, not the country, I guess it's the country model over here, right? So I need to import the correct one. Make sure you import the correct model over there with the correct name, and I can just go and say the type, and I can just go and ignore this one because it's not going to make use anymore. We just need to import it over here. And now if you have a different model from the different feature, then you can just import it over here. And after that, what we need to do is we need to go and configure our run migration offline and run migration online. The difference between these two is this is going to run once you have an offline database, right? If you just want to create a migration file, but if you don't have the database online, but if your database is online and you just want to go and to create the migrate and execute that to generate the database table once your database is online. So this is run once your database is online, and this is used if your database is offline. But basically we'll be using the online to just go and generate and run our migration over here. So let's just go, and the URL that we have defined is not this one because we are not going to grab it from our SQLAlchemy URL that we have defined in the Alembic configuration, but rather than that we are using our own configuration for the URL. So I can just go and say the database URL that we have defined in the top over here. That is what we are going to say. Target metadata will be of the target metadata. Literal binds true. Okay, so all of those should be the same. Only that we need to change is our database URL. That's what we need to configure. And the next thing is to run the migration online. We just need to grab our database URL over here. I guess the URL is, let's just go and create our, let's just go over here and create the, first thing I will do is I'll create an engine over here, create the engine, database engine. So I'll just go and say engine and create engine. I need to import this create engine from the SQLAlchemy over here. That's going to create the database engine, and I just don't want to create a pool over here. I just want to create the pool classes I guess pool classes will be of the pool.the null pool over here. That's going to execute every time we call this function. It's going to create a new database engine for us, and that's going to make use of any pool over here. And once we execute and complete this function, that's going to close that particular pool. So that should be good enough for us over here once we have the engine over here. And now I can make use of the, instead of using engine from config, I can make use of the engine dot the connect over here, engine dot connect over here. Connectable will be of the engine dot the connect, and I can say that as the connection over here. I guess that should be fine. Engine dot connection over here. And okay, so here, so let's just go and remove this one from here. It's not what we want. We need with the engine dot connect, so we can replace this one over here with engine dot connect as connection, context dot configure, and with this particular configure I can say the connection will be of equals to the connection, right? And then the target metadata will be of the target metadata. And obviously we can also add the compare the type to be of the true over here. We want to compare each of our database column, so that's why we added the compare as true over here. And let's just go and format this particular document over here. And with all of this configuration, we are good to go. So it's going to check for if context is on the offline mode, or if it's in the online mode. If it's on the online mode, it's always going to go and run this particular function that we have defined over here, or else if it's in the offline mode, it's going to run the offline function that we have defined over here. So I guess all of this should be good enough to go and run our migration over here. And let's just go and fix all of these the wording over here first of all. So let's just go to the VS Code and CS spell. Let's just go and add that one over here. And also let's just go back to over here and let's see if we have any other spelling error. So that should be .env over here. Let's just grab that, and also let's just go and add that over here as well. And let's just go and take a look over here. Okay, so I can remove this one from here. We are not going to use that anymore. And other than that, I guess we are good to go. It looks clean over here already. And the final configuration that we need to do over here, let's go to the Alembic .ini file over here. And one thing that we have to change over here is the script location. The script location is inside of our app over here now. So I just need to go and provide the correct path over here, and that should be from the app core, and that should be of the data source local and then the Alembic. So make sure that your path is correct, so it should locate that particular script location for you. Other than that, we don't have to change anything because we are also not using this one. The only thing that we have to change over here is the script location, because we have moved that the default location to inside of our app core data source local and then the Alembic over here. Now with this configuration, we can actually go and run our migration, and I have already added some of the Alembic command that you can actually make use from here. We have already run this one. The next thing that we need to do is we need to create the migration. So let's just go and copy this particular command, and let's just go and run that to go and generate the migration. So the message will be init dmigr. Let's just hit the enter over here, and that should go and create some of the files for us. So if you go to the version now, it should have that particular init migration file. All right, that's the message that we have defined with the unique ID that it gets, and it has the upgrade method that's going to go and create our the table, and also it has the downgrade method that's going to drop our table. So now the migration file is ready. We should be able to go and run the upgrade ahead command to go and add that, or go and generate that particular, run the migration file to actually go and create that table in our database. So only thing that you have to go and do is run that particular command, Alembic upgrade head. That's going to actually go and generate the table in our database. For now, we have only generated the migration file, but we haven't actually created that particular database table. Now, once the migration is ready, we can go and run the Alembic upgrade head to go and generate that particular table for us. Let's go and see. Now it has actually run that particular command, and it should be successful. Now the database should have that particular table that we have provided in our migration over here. And in the next, I guess it's quite long over here, and in the next lesson we'll see how we can connect using the GUI tool to our database, and as well as how to go and make use of the API. And we need to fix certain stuff in our API as well, like the models and all of those, to create, update, and all of the stuff over here. So let's meet up in the next one.